Well, did the IRS just get caught again targeting conservatives? First, the Tea Party, and now the IRS accused of trying to smoke out conservatives from Hollywood. That's right. If you aren't a typical Hollywood liberal, then you better watch out.
Absolutely, we were targeted. It feels kind of creepy to be on somebody's enemy list, especially when it's the government.
They've got a rogue agency over there that they knew nothing about that's got 100,000 employees.
I will not tolerate this kind of behavior in any agency, but especially in the IRS.
My question is, who's going to jail over this scandal?
And to find out that they are not going to press any charges and they're saying nothing's wrong is outrageous.
And in just minutes, a high-profile Hollywood insider who says the IRS has targeted him is here to go on the record. But first, our political panel. The Weekly Standard, Steve Hayes, the Cook Political Report's Amy Walter, and the Hill's A.B. Stoddard. Steve, first of all, what is going on with this?
Well, I mean, it certainly sounds like the IRS is targeting this group, Friends of Abe, which exists in Hollywood. And it's part of a broader pattern we've seen of the IRS targeting conservative groups across the country. This group is particularly interesting. It's existed mainly in secret now for the better part of a decade. They don't do much. They don't have much in the way of political activities. They get together. They have a big annual dinner every year. They sometimes go out and meet at a bar and have drinks and play pool. But it's not a group that's out there actively working in politics on a day-to-day or week-to-week or month-to-month basis. So it is curious to me that the IRS would target them and would visit upon them such scrutiny, given their rather limited and pretty much harmless political activities.
Well, and as I understand, they've been given, Amy, a bunch of extra questions to answer. Right. They've been trying to become tax exempt for the last 2 years. It's still pending, and they feel intimidated.
Well, you know, the reality now is if you have any link at all to politics, anyone who is associated with your group, who has made any sort of political statements, who's out front in any way, shape, or form, and you go and you apply for tax-exempt status, you're going to get a level of scrutiny.
Both sides of me, because I think...
But I think in this case, right, the issue in this case, clearly, is that these were high-profile people who also happen to be Republicans. Now, what's going to be curious to see is, are we going to see more cases of this, of outside groups getting scrutiny, or what we're going to see, I think, is fewer people saying, or fewer people going and asking the IRS for tax-exempt status, saying, you know what, let's just be a C4 instead of 501c3 so we don't have to go through these hoops.
Well, I actually agree. I think that just because like-minded people want to hang out together and have good speakers come, they shouldn't be exempt from taxation. I mean, I think that, you know, given the fact that we are in a state of tremendous debt, I think the entire tax exemption system that we have and all of the specifics of it should be heavily scrutinized. That said, one group should not be more scrutinized than the other if they're under the same designation in the code. Right now, there are rules that the Wall Street Journal reported on late last week, that were written in November, new rules designed to curtail even further any kind of political activity that these 501c3 groups can do, and that it was kept very quiet, but the administration has made sure through these new rules that they're going to get to do less than they even did before. Is it political to invite Herman Cain to your dinner like Friends of Abe did to hear him speak? No, it's not. If they don't have a political agenda, then they shouldn't be subjected to that kind of scrutiny. But some groups, I still think, should.
But here's the problem, and I don't know if they have to renew every year or get a whole set of questions. But the Tea Party is relatively new, and anyone who's applying now, if you're going to put that harsh scrutiny on them, you know, the people who are already sort of grandfathered in, they're in good shape. It's the new groups if they're going to be.
The question is this something that happened 2 years ago, and it was part of what we learned about with the Tea Party groups, and they were part of this, and it's still today part of the issue, or is this something that's happened since we learned about the scrutiny of the Tea Party group? You know what I mean? Like, is this something that's new, or was this already happening at the same time as the other groups? Or is it some
combination? I mean, I think with what we saw with the Tea Party was really unprecedented. I mean, the kind of scrutiny that the Tea Party had to withstand, and the fact that the Tea Party, in effect, disappeared for large stretches of the pre-2012 election cycle. I mean, you remember there were members of the media who were saying, where's the Tea Party? And part of that was, of course, just, you know, the energy of that kind of a movement dies down or subsides a little bit. But part of it, I think, was answered by the fact that they didn't get their status that they had been seeking. And when you had the Tea Party leaders appear before Congress and they were asked this question, they said basically, we were rendered dormant for that time period, which is a huge problem.
Nobody's not spending money. There's not less money in politics now because of what's been happening with the IRS.
But here's the sort of the secret way you can really be awful for the IRS and something like the Tea Party or a conservative group or any group, a liberal group, whatever, is you don't make a decision. You simply keep sending questions because without a decision, you can't appeal to the next level. And things don't have to take 2 years to go through to figure out whether or not something is tax exempt now. And that's the one thing I've never seen anyone really sort of hone in and look at. You know, was there an unduly was there a length of time that was imposed on certain groups that other groups got a swifter road?
Yeah, I think there's no question that that was the case, particularly with the original wave of scrutiny that the Tea Party groups had to withstand. But there's another problem. Unions are not subject to the same rules. Unions are 501c5. They play by an entirely different set of rules. So when you, in effect, redefine politics to broaden the scope and you use it to look particularly at conservative groups, but a wide variety of these tax-exempt groups, but you don't subject unions to the same scrutiny, to the same rules, that's a built-in problem. It's baked in.
But then that goes back to where, I mean, you've got to do everybody if you're going to make everyone.
Right. And not only is Steve right that the unions are in a different designation under the code, but obviously everyone who's under the same one needs to be held to the same standard of scrutiny. My argument is just that, you know, in the state we are with our budget situation, we're not to be just exempting people willy-nilly because they like to get together
let's revoke
once in a while.
But then to make a level playing field, let's revoke everybody else on, you know, who's already got it. You know, we've got to do that too.
Right. I think the American people really have a very small understanding of how many groups are actually getting exempt from taxation, and I think they wouldn't like it if they knew it.
All right, panel, stay with us because we have much more to talk to you about. But right now, the Friends of Abe protects its members' identities, fearing the members will be blacklisted in liberal Hollywood. But a few members of the conservative group have gone public, including movie writer and producer Lionel Chetwin. He joins us. Nice to see you, sir.
Good to see you, Greta. Pleased to be here.
All right. So, Friends of Abe, I know you're not going to tell me who are the members, but let me ask you first. I mean, are they really fearful they will be blacklisted if they are named as members of this sort of loosely conservative group, this loosely gathered group?
Many are. I mean, a lot of it depends on what stage of your career that you're at. Hollywood operates less with a blacklist as a whitelist. And a career in Hollywood, to build it, requires getting yourself positioned so that you're perceived as someone who can be useful, who's employable, who's sort of part of the seed, who belongs. And one of the easy ways to do that is to be politically active, particularly on the left. In fact, only on the left. Beginning in the 60s, I suppose, but with increasing vigor, you know, personal politics became very much a part of the fabric of Hollywood, and the part of our life and the part of the way we meet. And if you're not there, if you're not one of them, then you're not one of them. And yeah, that's going to hurt you. It's going to hurt you in terms of awareness, and you have to climb up above that, and it's not easy. No.
All right, is Friends of Abe's being unfairly targeted by the IRS, and how do you know that?
Well, I don't think we want to start a war with the IRS. We send them care packages. No. We applied for tax-exempt status out of a community in which these things are, again, part of the tapestry. People for the American Way, Norman Lear's group has about 4 of these organizations. They sprout up all over the place. They're constantly raising money. They're constantly active. We wanted to try and find some more formal way to channel what we do and be more intelligent about it. I mean, Steve's description of us as sort of a Rotary Club on Valium, massive Valium, isn't really that far off, but we are a little more than that. We wanted to plant our feet in the ground, collect money from people who are interested in what we were doing, and trying to organize a program and educate ourselves about who we are and how we relate to the outside world. That application was made a very, very long time ago, and it had been met only with questions and more questions and more questions, without resolution, which means that you really can't go any further. And so one would have to feel that we're not a very high priority, whereas we've seen other organizations in town of a different point of view get through the process much more quickly.
So, I guess the conclusion is you feel that because of your political leanings, that your group, because it's more conservative, is discriminated against in favor of perhaps a more left-leaning group in Hollywood. Is that a fair statement?
Well, the questions are, we know that there was a lookout list, right? We know that, be on the lookout for. And that people who ended up on that list were treated to a much more dilatory process than those who weren't. We've been at this over 2 years, and it's you know, nobody wants to sit on Fox News and denounce the IRS, at least I don't in any event. In particular, in this community, we're very vulnerable because almost everyone here is an independent contractor, and therefore so everyone's a walking S corporation. But I think it's fair to say that we have been subjected to a scrutiny that goes beyond what might be reasonably expected. Yeah, by far.
Lionel, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.